She's back. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkill's tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future updates and future guides that will be coming down the road. Link to Patreon can be found in the description below. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and as I said, she is back. And what I mean is the MixMugz TBM-930 Improvement Mod has been updated to work with SU7. Now, for those of you who are unaware of MixMugz TBM-930 Improvement Mod, geez, that's a mouthful, you can find a link to it down in the description below. And what it does is it adds really neat features such as opening the doors, things like that. But more importantly, it absolutely brings the aircraft much, much closer to real-world performance. Everything from takeoff speed, rotation speed, landing speeds, flap drag, you name it, and then overall engine horsepower is drastically improved compared to the default Asobo TBM-930. So it has been a long time since I've flown the TBM, and quite frankly, I've missed her. I'm fully expecting her just to give me absolute hell today because it's been so long since I've talked to her. She gets really moody with me when I don't fly her very much. So we are going to take her here from Aspen, Colorado over to beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. We are also going to be walking through everything that I do step by step, whether it be the SimBrief flight plan all the way over to obviously programming and starting the aircraft, and the best part, flying it. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start out with the SimBrief information, check our METAR information, create our flight plan, and then we'll get into fueling the aircraft and getting her ready to go. All right, so as I stated, first thing we need to do is check the weather information. So let's get our METAR information. Pull down here. I do really enjoy that this is here now. So we got winds at, let's see here, 0902 at 20 knots. Are you kidding me? Whoa. Alrighty, well, 20 knots. That's going to be quite impressive. Anyway, oh wait. I wonder how many of you are laughing at me already. Okay, so guys, that's the time. Oh, it's going to be an interesting flight. So how about we have winds coming in at 190 at 5 knots. We have visibility at 3 nautical miles. Pretty drab weather out here, man. Let's see here, broken up at 9,000. And let's just keep on moving along here. We got temperature of 1, humidity of 1, and altimeter at 2967. So winds coming in from 190. Let's go ahead and take a peek at what our runway is going to look like. Actually, we can do that later. We don't need to worry about that right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at SimBrief now. Okay, so I totally lied. We are absolutely going to be looking at Navigraph first. So let's see here. We have runway 15. We'll see. Winds coming at 190. 15 is going to be our departing runway. Now we'll take a look over at SimBrief. So let's pull the Navigraph down. Go to SimBrief here. Boom. There she is. Let me drag it over here so you guys can see something. There we go. Okay, so again, we have KSE for our ICAO out of Aspen going to Las Vegas using the aircraft TBM-900. Make sure you set your reserve fuel to 45 minutes for an IFR flight. We have a climb profile looking at 170 knots to climb out. We're going to be going a lot faster than that, especially once we clear. We're probably looking more like 200 knots, but we'll take a look at the speeds as we get moving down the road here. And let's see here. Departure runway negative. We're looking for a departure runway 15. There we go. That is going to affect our SID. And coming in respectively on runway 19 left in Las Vegas. We're not going to worry about carrying any extra fuel. We're good there. Carrying 4 passengers on board, 500 pounds of cargo. We are in pounds, as you can see up here. You can switch between kilograms and pounds at the top. If you guys don't use SimBrief for your flight planning, I highly recommend it, especially if you're new to it. It just takes a lot of the effort out of it. I'm going to be quite blunt. Think of it as having your own personal dispatcher. And you can see we are running the 2112 current AIRAC cycle, so everything should be according to real world route. I have to slow down when I say that, otherwise it gets ridiculous. And I am talking fast, guys. I am very aware of that, and it's just because these videos can get rather long when I don't. So, plus I ramble a lot anyway. I'm aware of it. It's been one of those things that happened since I was a boy. Probably not going to change. And I'm still a boy. I mean, a man, you know. I'm a man. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm in a mood, guys. You're just going to have to bear with me. So let's see what we got going on. We're going to go up to cruising altitude of 20 or flight level 280. And there's our fuel. We're looking at 1,620 pounds of fuel. Got our route here. And a total payload weight we're looking of 1225. So let's go ahead and set the aircraft up. So coming to the aircraft, we can close our meet our information for now. Go to our weights and balances, and fuel said, oh, my bad. I just want to click out of the screen for 1620. So let's pull this one over here. Watching that fuel counter down at the bottom. 1624. I'll take the other 4 pounds. And then payload, what did we say? What did we say? What did we say? Payload 1225. Do 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 do. Wow. Yeah, okay, so we're too heavy for that. Okay, so scratch that payload. We're just gonna pull that back a little bit. Okay. Obviously, SimBrief or Microsoft Flight Simulator, they have an argument. So we're not going to worry about the payload. And I highly recommend that, guys. Unless you're flying like the A320, something where you can really dial in your payload and make sure it's accurate. Don't worry about it too much. You know, as long as you know what you're wanting to fly the plane. The biggest thing that I like to make sure is the fuel. I like to make sure I get the fuel right. So, okay. So let's close this out here. And now we can start our pre-flight checklist of the aircraft. Okay, friends, let's go ahead and take a look at the aircraft here. So, moving from left to right, taxi light and all exterior lights are off. Dimmer, set it as necessary. We wanted to make sure that the crash bar is actually down for pre-start. Batteries off, generators off, oxygen's off. Starter is off. Ignition should be set to off. Auxiliary boost pumps off. Fuel selector should be set at manual and autopilot and trim system off. Emergency locator transmitter in the center arm/off position. Step forward here into our, let's get rid of the flight yokes for a minute. Boop. There we go. All right, we're going to work our way from left to right here. Air conditioning system should be off during start. All anti-ice is off. Initial separator is off. Parking brake is set. Landing gear handles down. Hot airflow for engine start should be actually set to the floorboard. Pressurization is off. Manual override off. Throttle in the cutoff position. Flaps retracted, visually inspected. And alternate static air source is pushed in and closed. All circuit breakers verified, pushed in and closed as well. So with that in mind, we can now take a look at starting her up. So we're going to come back up top. Crash bar comes up, battery comes on, generator comes on, nav lights can come on for some exterior lights and alert. Taking a look, we want to make sure our MFD is on so we have our engine gauges. We can clear that master caution. With battery power on, we will now want to come down, verify again that all the lights, test, and landing gear are working. Do a check down sequence on it. Now we are getting 3 flashing greens. I know it probably only looks like 1. Let me change the weather so you guys can see that they're all functioning here. Or change time of day. Let's back that up. There we go. So there you go. All right, gear is verified down and locked. And we're ready for engine start. So coming back up top, we're going to make sure ignition goes into the on position, auxiliary boost pumps to the on position, and now take our starter and give it a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and come down for some monitoring. We're going to be watching this NG gauge here. This is the middle gauge for those of you who may be having a hard time seeing it, or third one I should say. Looking for 13%, which we're crossing now. Grab your throttle, move it forward into the first notch. Clear those master cautions. And we'll now be able to watch that engine. Let's go ahead and close the doors while the engine's spinning up. We're looking for 53% now on the NG. At 53%, we'll move the throttle forward into high idle, then over into flight idle. So there we go. Coming forward, holding that left click down, giving her a right click, takes the throttle into idle. I always like to cycle my throttle, my physical throttle on my desk, make sure it's in sync. And engine start is complete. So let's go ahead and come up top once again. And we're going to make sure ignition goes into auto, auxiliary boost pumps to auto, fuel selection can now go to auto, autopilot trim system goes to on, and oxygen, yes, according to the TBM-930 Real World Pilot's Operational Handbook, oxygen is turned on at engine start. So now moving our way back down, we can set air conditioning as desired, anti-ice systems. We're going to go ahead and throw them on now. Clearly, it's nice and nasty outside. Pitot and stall heaters will come on now as well. Normally, I wouldn't turn those on until we get to the runway, but again, we're already in snow, and it looks like the weather's getting worse. So, we're going to want to get out of here pretty quick here. Pressurization switch goes to max diff or auto. Now remember, max diff is going to pressurize the aircraft as quickly as possible. So although that is a good thing in an emergency situation or in a very fast climb or descent for that matter, auto is going to be the most comfortable for you and your passengers. So keep that bared in mind. Hot airflow, we're obviously going to want that coming out of the vents. It's nasty outside as we just discussed. Flaps will remain retracted until we're ready for takeoff. And other than that, the aircraft is started and we are ready to start programming the flight computer as well as setting up the autopilot for takeoff. So let's get started. All right, so at this point now it's time to enter in our flight plan. So you want to make sure you're on the MFD page, go to flight plan. We're going to enter our origin. Kilo Alpha Sierra Echo. Oops, back. Kilo Lima Alpha Sierra for Las Vegas. And now we can enter our en route waypoints. And let's see here. Nope. That's what I want. I want that. There we go. And we're going to be going direct to Linz. And hit enter. And then from here, direct to JNC. Where's my asterisk? Used to be able to put an asterisk between them and then keep going the sequence. But, anyway. JNC. Keep scrolling down here. And then direct to Hares. And then, let's see here. What is it? Uniform Juliet Alpha Charlie India. And then direct to Echo Tango Yankee India Romeo. And then from here we're going to jump on. Nope, never mind, not yet. Then we're going to go to Mike. Enter. Check it. Look at your distances here. And you guys can typically, well, plus this one's in Australia. We're not going to Australia. Plus, I don't think we have the fuel for it. You know, it gets pretty expensive. And then from here, we're going to be jumping on an airway. So select the waypoint, hit load airway, find our airway. Tango 361 is that one right up on top. Our exit point, if we take a look at our flight plan again, is the Wander. So there it is right there. All right. And we can go ahead and hit load airway. From there, we don't have a star today, but we do have a approach. So we're going to go to our procedures, go to approach, select runway 19 left. And we'll just do the RNAV. And then we got to see what our transition point is. So for that, we're going to go back to Navigraph. And we're already selected on Las Vegas. Let's go to the star. Oh, we don't need a star. Sorry, go to the approach. And what I picked, the Yankee, right? And let's zoom in here and see what we got. So, looks like Suvi is going to be the easiest way in here. So that's a transition point there. So let's see what our options are here for the transition. Suvi, there it is. And hit load. Beautiful. All right, so now if we zoom out on our map, and then actually what we can do is just left click that knob, that rotary, and let's go take a peek at our flight. Just making sure it's not doing anything weird like that behavior right there. That's pretty odd. What's that going on? So maybe that's not going to be the best way because it's got us coming way down in here and then we go back up here. So I think when we get to, what we'll do is when we get to Chic, we'll just activate the approach. And at that point we should turn on to Suvi. So that'll be fine. No big deal. I'm not going to worry about editing all that out. This is the remainder of the airway. Now we could check even Lappin. Oops, sorry guys. Just dawned on me that I had the Navigraph up. And we can hide sim brief here. So here's what I was talking about. Sorry. So you can see here, there's chic, and then we get to this weird sort of chaos here. What's going to happen is this is going to take us to the end of the airway, and then it wants to come all the way back up here to Suvi. Our approach is a little weird. I almost wonder if we shouldn't take the airway. Well, it's not a huge deal. Like I said, what we'll do is when we get to chic is we'll activate the approach mode here. At that point, the aircraft will ditch the rest of this and turn on to Suvi and then into the approach. So not a big deal at all. So let's just go ahead and continue onward. So going back to our MFD, we've got our procedures in, we've got our flight plan in. Now let's take a look at some of the other information that we're going to want. So from here, we're going to want to go to our speed bugs. Now most of this is configured for us. It's not too bad here, but we do want to change this to 9 or 5 knots for our rotation speed. I just find it to be a bit easier for me. And let's see here, best rate of climb, we're looking at 124 knots. So we're going to be using that, or best speed for climb, excuse me. And then we have best rate and best angle. And then our rotation speed we're going to want, and then 85 knots for the approach. So not too bad. Again, 95 knots is something that I use. I just find it to be a better climb out. The aircraft gets rolling much faster here. So let's go ahead and come back out here. Next thing we'll do is set up our radio. We need to set up our transponder. So let's come over here to the transponder. And we're simulating that we get a clearance. And let's do 6135. Sure, sounds great. And let's go ahead and turn that to on for now. We'll make sure to turn to altitude reporting before takeoff. So there we go. And we could use the ident if we needed to. Not worried about any radios. I'm not using any of the in-game radio systems today. I rarely do. I don't know why I hit backspace. That's not the button I wanted. So let's go through things here. We have our flight plan set. We have our transponder set. We do need to still set our altimeter, so let's get that locked in. And for that, I'm going to go back to our MEDAR information. That is not our MEDAR information. Come on. Close. Thank you. And MEDAR and the altimeter was 29067. Not bad. So let's roll that down. Am I going the right way? Yes, I am. Okay. 29067. Set that down to standby. Okay. And let's start setting up some of our other configuration here. We want to make sure the CDI here is on our FMS. PFD settings, we can come down here. I do like to always have my wind on, so we go to wind, and option 3 is there. Good. Always double check that. And, alright, so transition altitude, barometer set, CDI is set. Let's set our speed bug. So for climb out speed, we're going to be looking at, what am I looking for? Flight level change. And we're going to be looking for that 124 knots initially. We'll be holding that until we pass through about 10,000 feet, and then we'll be maybe a little less. But you can see we're already at 7,700, so we're not going to be at this speed very long. But it'll be good. Alright, so there's 124 knots on there. Set our initial altitude. Initial altitude, we're going to be looking for 16,000. Hello. There we go. $16,000, and then we'll line up our heading with the runway once we get up there. Yaw damper and autopilot remain off until after takeoff. Flight directors can come on. And other than that, folks, I think we're good to go. I think we are good to go. So, let's get ready for taxi. All right, we got our track IR set. We can now come up top, turn on the taxi light. Helps if I'm in the right screen. Whoa, come back. And I'm just doing one last check, make sure I got everything up here. One last check, making sure we got everything down there. Flight controls are set. Let's pull that yoke back on, make sure I got that. Alright. Now I do like to fly with the yokes off. I do that for you guys, so that way you guys can see everything that I'm doing down here. Getting ready to taxi, let's turn that inertial separator on. And let's see here. Last thing I need to do is get Navigraph up for me for my taxi information. I still love using, I know that there's a couple different ways that you can now integrate Navigraph with your flight simulator directly, but I still find the desktop application, if you've got the monitor real estate, I feel like the desktop application is the best way to go still. Okay, so we should be getting a alert soon for the inertial separator, but that's totally fine. All right, there it is. There's that master caution. Go ahead and turn that off. Adding some power. Running over the tug. Look at this weather, man. And the one thing I will warn you, the TBM loves to move. So in taxi, she'll get rolling. And we still do not bring the flaps down until we are ready for takeoff. So right about the time that we enter the runway here, that's when we'll do it. Yeah, that was not the taxiway. Oops. All right, let's lock her down. Flaps 1 for takeoff. Let's go to our radio menu again. Set our transponder. I didn't mean to hit the ident. Set our transponder to altitude reporting for flight. As we take the runway, turn the strobe lights on, turn the landing lights on. Now we are running a little short on the runway today, but I don't need all that runway space. TBM gets rolling really quickly. All right, center lined. Let's lock in that runway heading in case we need the heading mode. Power up. Takeoff torque set. Airspeed alive. Coming up on 90 knots. There's my 95 rotating. Gear coming up. Reducing our climb rate, looking for that 124 knots. Starting a left-hand turn. Flaps and come up. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? We're going to stay a little left of the course line there until we or course heading. Still flying her manually. We are passing through 10,000. Lights off. Yaw damper came on automatically, which is interesting. Increasing our rate of climb, getting back to our 124 knots. Just about ready to intercept. Whoo, getting bumpy. Bit ready to intercept our course line, so we'll start coming right. Just a little bit, nice and gently. Still got time. This aircraft is so much fun to fly with this mod. Man, we are bumpy today, aren't we? Mercy. Set our cruise altitude. Whoops, got too far. There's 28,000. Man, it is bumpy as hell up here. Which is cool. I'm okay with that. Turn further left. We got right of our course line again. We're leaving the inertial separator on until we clear these clouds. Come on, girl. Seatbelt sign remains on. I'm going to tell you guys that right now. You keep those seatbelts on. We're getting just beaten up here. Hopefully it'll smooth out as we gain some altitude. Or it's going to be a rough ride up here. Girl, mercy. I don't think I've ever flown with it this bouncy. This is a good one. I'm trying to stay with the flight directors here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and engage the autopilot, let her take over. Look at that, man. Brutal. We got all of our anti-ice on, right? Yep. Okay, cool. Look at that. We are at negative 17 degrees Celsius. So let's see here. What would that be? What was that 17 times 32, right? Whoa! There's a shear. Oh, helps if I turn on nav mode. Almost forgot a major step. Look at it, right on time. Talk about catching that. That would have sucked. Alright guys, well, we have quite the hike up to 28,000 feet. I will catch you guys as we get closer to the top of descent here. There really isn't a whole lot more going on. The only thing we do need to do right now is set our barometer back to the default 29902, or excuse me, the standard, not the default. So 29902. And then we'll get up to 28,000 feet, and then once we're up at cruise, we'll start programming the VNAV calculations for our top of descent. Now, VNAV doesn't actually control the descent, but it will give us our locations. It will tell us when we need to descend, which is really, really handy. And then I'll show you guys how we actually manage the descent all the way down. It's a pretty nifty configuration. But anyway, guys, I will catch you in just a bit. All right, guys, so we've been up at cruise for quite a bit here, down to about 80% power. And cruising along about Mach 0.5, so a little faster than what we projected, which is nice. Let's see here, I got even with the 70 knot headwind. How about that? Now, what we're going to take a look at now is configuring the VNAV for our top of descent, so that way it tells us when our top of descent is. Now, what we're going to be looking at is, according to our flight plan, okay, unfortunately I closed it, but on our flight plan, oh, you know what? Here, I can reopen it for you guys. On our flight plan, it shows at Mike to be down at 16,000 feet. And give me just a second, I'm pulling that up. So we're going to use that as our initial reference point. Let's see here, my flight plan, print preview, there it is. Let's bring it up on the screen for you guys. Come on. I hate it when it does this. There it is. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what we're looking at here is this guy right here. So you can see here it's got Mike at 16,000. So we're going to use that as our target, as our first altitude change. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. Let me get a better view here. There we go. And I'll zoom in a little bit closer here. There we are. And let me get SimBrief off the page here. We're going to come back to our flight plan. No, cancel. Just leave me alone. I hate it when it does that desynchronized junk. And we're going to go to VNav. We're going to go to VNav enabled. And then we're going to go back. Cancel again. I don't care about that. And we're going to find Mike. And we're going to enter an altitude here of 16,000 feet. And hit backspace. Oop. I hit backspace. Sorry. You're going to come down and hit enter. And then once we get an enter, we should get a top of descent calculation right there, right at the 150 mile mark. You can see top of descent. Now the nice thing is as we get to 1 minute from that location, right here we're going to get an alert on our PFD here that says 1 minute to top of descent, at which point we'll start reducing our power to about 50-60%. And then set our altitude down. So what we can do now to sort of get ahead of things is we can set our altitude to 16,000. Nothing's going to engage until we actually get down there. You know what? Let me do, I think the altitude bug is still set. No, maybe not. There we go. And there's 16,000 feet. And once we get to that point, we're going to go ahead and enable vertical speed, and I will show you guys how we manage the descent at that point. The other thing is once we got up to our cruise altitude, and for the most part got out of the cloud canopy, I went ahead and turned the initial separator off. Now if we get into anything much thicker than this or start really getting into any heavy clouds, I don't know why the proposed looking so crappy there, but if we get into any heavy clouds, things like that, we'll have to turn the inertial separator back on. The reason why that's important to remember is that the inertial separator actually reduces engine torque, so you need to compensate by adding more throttle anytime that you have the inertial separator turned on. You're going to have reduced power while that's on. Now, in the contrast to that, when you turn the inertial separator off, you need to reduce the throttle, otherwise you're going to over torque the engine. You're going to be running at max power. So just keep that in mind, guys. And then other than that, we've got our standard altimeter set. We're cruising right along. Again, we're sitting at about 150 nautical miles till our top of descent. And so I'll catch you guys in just a few. All right, I wanted you guys to be a part of this. Check this wind out, man. This weather. By the way, we're going to turn the inertial separator back on. I'm getting the crap kicked out of me up here. Of course, now it's going to behave itself, right? Like the last couple of minutes, I've just been getting the crap pounded out of me. Like this aircraft is just getting abused. I have a feeling we're going to be coming down to some nasty weather. And we are coming up, we're about 40 miles or so from our top of descent, so we got a bit to go yet, but anyway, I was hoping you guys would be able to see it, but it looks like it's settling down now. But I'll catch you guys at the top of descent. Alright, so as we start getting closer, let's talk about a few more cool things that we can do. So if we go to the VNav page, we get this. Top of descent in 5 minutes, 38 seconds. We're looking at a 3-degree angle of descent and a target vertical speed of 1,073 feet per minute. Anyway, so it's really handy when you start getting close. You know, you're watching your MFD, you're keeping your eye on your range. You know, once you start closing the distance, you know, and you really want to get an idea. All right, how much time do I have? Bring up your VNav page, and you can bring it up on either one. It doesn't matter which one you want to use. So you have that option available to you, but it really makes it nice to have this on the display. That way you can sort of plan how you're going to proceed in the next few minutes of the flight, because obviously once we start the descent, you've got a few more minutes to kick back, but not long until things really start picking up and we're going to start getting busy again. So just wanted to show that to you guys, so we will see you in about 5 minutes. Alright guys, so here's our alert. Oh, I just saw the end of it there, but there was a top of distance in 1 minute. So let's get back up here. We're going to pull some power off. About 40, 35%, somewhere around there. We're going to go to vertical speed mode. And we're watching this caret here. When this caret, the idea is to keep this caret aligned with our altitude. This is our rate of descent target. We want to move our vertical speed down so that way our descent rate matches our vertical speed target, but we want to keep this our glide path indicator. We want to keep this caret right at our altitude indicator. So it takes a little bit of finagling when you first start the descent, but the idea is you want to sort of stay ahead of it. So we're going to start our descent now. And sometimes you're going to have to, you know, as your speed changes and things like that, we're going to have to constantly be adjusting quite a bit here for a minute. Like you can see, we're descending too fast now. So we're going to shallow up. And it's because before anyone starts saying it, and it happens in every freaking video I've done, right now, as of this moment, the TBM-930 from Microsoft Flight Simulator does not have VNav. You cannot use it. It does not work. You can set a descent rate, or you can set your target, but it will not actually follow the glide path. You have to manage your descent all the way down. This is just a nice way to give you a visual representation of what the aircraft has to do in order for you to reach the descent rate at your desired location, or descent altitude at desired location. And I went the wrong way, so that was my fault. But anyway, that's basically it. So you're just going to follow it down here. Again, the idea is to keep your altitude target. This is our glide path indicator. So we're going to keep the glide path indicator right in line with our current altitude, and just sort of follow it down and adjust as necessary. Alright, so I will catch you guys when we get to Shriek. When we get to Shriek here, sorry, not Shriek, Shriek. When we get to Shriek, we're going to activate the approach mode and turn on to the approach into Las Vegas. We already have our inertial separator on, anti-ice is obviously on, so everything is ready to go here. We'll just be ready to turn on to the runway once we get down there, so I'll see you guys in a few. Alright, so we're approaching 16,000 feet here, guys, and we're actually going to continue on descending down. I need to reduce our descent rate a little bit. Let's take that back down to about 1,000. I stepped away from the computer for a minute, so of course I paid the price for that. But looking at Navigraph again, we have to change our approach. So the winds in Vegas right now are 230 at 9 knots. So we're going to be coming on the ILS 26 left, which is what we're looking at right here. We need to make sure we have our ILS frequency set in so that we can use ILS approach. So let's get Navigraph kicked off of here. And I'm going to show you guys what we did. We just went into procedures, went to the approach, changed our ILS runway, or our runway to the ILS 26, and then changed our transition point down to the Preno. Then we hit load. Okay, and again, we have our altimeter pressure already dialed in. We're going to keep descending on down. We're going to come down to, according to the Navigraph chart, we need to be at 8,000 feet by Preno. So we're going to take us all the way down to 8,000 here, make sure that we're on target. And I'm going to go back into vertical speed and continue our descent down at about 1,100 to 1,000 feet per minute. And then as we get to Shriek again, we're still going to do the same thing. We're going to activate the approach mode and bring her straight in. So we really need to descend fast because we're not going to be following the full line here. So we really want to make sure we get that altitude down. So I'll be monitoring it, and if for any reason by Shriek, if we're not at 10,000 feet by then, I'll probably increase our descent rate. We are looking at 20 miles. We should be fine. 5,000 feet and 20 miles, that shouldn't be an issue. So I'll see you guys when we get to Shriek and activate the approach, and from there it'll be fun. Catch you guys in a few. All right, we are approaching 10,000 feet, so lights are coming back on. Strobe light's still on. Everything else looks good. Pretty good flight, all in all. A couple little hiccups here and there, but nothing crazy. We're 5 miles away from Chic. 2,000 feet to go, and we got probably 30 miles to Preno, so we are more than fine. So, at this point, the weather looks like it might be clearing up a bit. Definitely a pretty approach in. Not too shabby. So I'm going to go ahead and activate the approach now. And you can see now we are bypassing all of this and going direct from Chic to Preno. So that is the easiest way to manage that. We're not going to worry about activating our VOR tracking until we get to Preno. Preno is the initial fix for the ILS approach. So once we get to Preno and we turn on to that course, then we'll bring up our VOR navigation and let the aircraft bring herself in, and it will be so much nicer than an RNAV approach. I mean, the really only difference is with an RNAV approach, you just have to pay attention to your altitude. You are the one managing your altitude. That's important to remember. You know, where an ILS approach, once the ILS frequency is acquired and the glide slope is acquired, the aircraft will fly itself to the center line of the runway and manage the altitude for you. So it makes it you know, it makes it easier. Let's call it what it is. Call it what it is. But from here, again, we've already got our speed bug set for 85 knots, so that should populate on the speed tape when we're ready. Not a whole lot else that we have to be concerned with. The transponder's already set. We're still using the same transponder code all the way in. We're not going to simulate a transponder change. And everything else is configured. So once we turn on that initial fix, we'll start slowing down a bit. Not too much here. I mean, we're already below required speed. So it'll be a nice smooth approach into Las Vegas, and I'll catch you guys in just a few minutes when we turn on to the initial fix. Alright guys, we are getting close to Preno, so we're going to take a look at Navigraph one more time for a couple of other pieces of information. What we're going to be looking for here is our touchdown zone elevation. So you can see TDZE looking at 2069, so we're going to set our altitude down to 2,000 feet. That dialed in. Oh, sorry. Still getting used to doing that like this. Anyway, so we just turned our altitude down to 2,000 feet here, and then as we make the turn on to Preno, we'll re-engage vertical speed mode for a minute, and then we'll switch into approach mode and switch over to the CDI. So you guys are going to see how this all goes here in just a minute. Now we can see down here that we have picked up the VOR signal, so we could switch even now if we wanted to. But we'll wait till we make the actual turn on to Preno. But this is a good sign. It means that the ILS frequency has been acquired by the nav radio, and we'll be good to turn it on once we make our turn on to the initial fix. So that'll be in just a couple minutes here. We're just about done. Alright, it is time. We can see the G here indicating the glide slope is acquired. So we are literally going to switch over to the localizer. It's going to get us on the center of the runway. We're going to activate the approach mode. You can see the glide slope's already turned green here. That indicates the glide slope is locked. The aircraft is going to start descending itself. We're going to start pulling our power back, again, to about 30% of maximum power. Got a little low there. And start slowing us down here. Easy peasy from here. The aircraft's descending us all on its own. Now, the other thing we can do is go back to Navigraph one more time and take a look at the missed approach. Climb to 3,200. So that's what we're looking at here. We would climb to 3,200 and then climbing right and turn to 6,000 on a heading of 080 degrees. So what we're going to do is just set that escape altitude into the altimeter now that the glide slope has taken over. This isn't going to affect our descent at all. But that way, if for any reason we need to come out of approach mode, we would basically just set the altimeter target again and let it climb out. This is going to be all good stuff here. We're at 160 knots, so we're ready for flaps 1. We're still a little far out. We don't need to do it yet, but we are ready for when it's time. So this is where it gets exciting. I love landing. Landings are probably... I think landings are my favorite. I think landings are everybody's favorite. Let's call it as it is. Landings are a blast. Landing in the TBM is just easy peasy. Can't ask for an easier flight. Coming up on 15 out. So I'm going to catch you guys probably right about Relin here. Right about in here. Otherwise, because from here, we're just descending. There's nothing really fancy to pay attention to at this point. So I'll catch you guys in just a few minutes when we're on the final. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. So we're going to go flaps 1 here. Start pulling the power off again. We are looking for 85 knots here. For about 120 knots, and we'll bring the landing gear down. We could bring it down now, we just don't need to. That's close enough. Landing gear coming down. At this point, we can go full flaps. Baby. A nice strong crosswind. Look at this. What are we coming in with? 20 knot crosswind. You know, I don't even know what the maximum limitation is for this aircraft, but. And I'm gonna double check our altimeter. Still looking good. Perfect. Some more power off, get down to our 85 knots in the approach speed. About 200 feet on the radar altimeter here. We will take control of the aircraft here. There's 85. Let's adding some power back in. Actually, you know what? Let's take it now. Let's be brave here. Turn the yaw damp, autopilot, and yaw damper get turned off. Come on, no. Just watching the PAPI lights now. Trying to keep us on course here. Man, that's nasty. Nasty. Getting high. Got this. Man, it's... God, this wind. This is tough. Oh, sweet lady. Looking great. Come on. A little bumpy. We got this. We got this, my girl. Come on. Throttles all the way aft. Gentle flare. Like Buddha. Easy landing. Gently applying the wheel brakes. I'm going to make sure we completely clear the runway. Taxi light. Ah! Camera. Alright, and once we've cleared that threshold, we can go ahead and stop the aircraft. Let's clean her up. At this point, we would taxi to our gate and shut the aircraft down. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this flight. I certainly did. It was actually quite a challenging one. That weather was just brutal up there. We can disengage approach mode, turn our flight directors off, and we are cleared to park our aircraft. We can turn our pitot heat off. All of our anti-ice can now come off. Weather's more than fine now here in Las Vegas. No concerns there of ice. But anyway, guys, as I said, if you guys are interested in learning to fly the TBM, be sure to check out my Patreon site. I have a full tutorial guide on how to fly this aircraft. We literally go everything from startup, flight planning, programming, completing the flight, all the way to shut down at the destination, all within one PDF guide that will take you through the whole thing. Has everything from setting up the Navigraph integration in the G3000, you name it, it's there. So be sure to check that out if you guys are interested in learning how to fly the TBM and would like to have a visual aid available. I'd really appreciate the support. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, guys. It really does make a difference with the YouTube algorithm. It makes a huge difference for us. And as always, stay safe and healthy, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, folks.